So, very briefly, this sheet that has the figures on it, on one side there's just a few columns, and it's got statement of financial activities for the year ended 2017, and the other side is the budget. On that page, it's 2017, and there are only two figures that I want to highlight to you, and the first one is voluntary income, which is under receipts, and the number 1, and it's 93,320. That's all I need to point out to you. That's the amount that we get from you and from members of the congregation week by week. And we take that in, and some of it goes towards, it goes to 121 is what we know it in the Church of Scotland. But for those of you who are not from the Church of Scotland, our main offices are at 121 George Street in Edinburgh. And so we just always call it 121. And they get the blame for everything. Because it's easy to blame them for everything, and our money goes to 121, and it then supports ministry across Scotland. You don't pay for me. I have to tell you that. You pay for ministry in Scotland, and it's spread out and shared out across the Church of Scotland. And then the very bottom, the left-hand column, the very bottom, in brackets, 1805. That was our loss. The brackets mean it's a negative figure. And we made a loss of £1,805 on paper. Actually, what happened was, when we went to pay our stipend, which is the money that goes to 121, it wasn't paid by the bank in December, and it was carried on to January. And because of the way we do accounts, it's from January to January, and it came into 2017, but it was actually a 2016 amount. So the money was there, but on paper, we overspent. We try not to do that, because it's not good. We try to keep our money, and we'll see that a little bit later. The other side is our budget for this year. And that's really just for your information, so that you see some of the things that get us income into the congregation, and things that it's spent on for the work of God in our congregation and in the life of the congregation. It used to be that the congregation approved the accounts, and we had a separate meeting for that. That was changed a number of years ago, and now the Kirk Session approved the accounts, and we simply have to give you a copy. Now, what that means is there's no space, really, for asking questions. But what I want to say is, if you have questions about the accounts, about how the money is used and where it goes, please, at any point during the year, ask, and we will try and answer your questions. There's nothing secret and nothing hidden, and we want to make sure that everybody is aware and has the information that you... Not everybody wants the same amount of information, and that's absolutely fine. And there are full copies of the full statement of accounts available if anybody wants one from today. Today I really want to talk a little bit about our congregation, because we are a charity, and we have to have an annual meeting, although we no longer do the accounts at it. And so I want to talk a little bit about where we are today, how we fit into the wider church. And for those who don't really know, here is a very brief rundown of the structure of the Church of Scotland. And please bear with me if you know it already, and even if you don't, please bear with me, because it's important later. The first thing is that we have congregations. Here we are a congregation, Moncton and Prestwick North Parish Church, the congregation of. And all across Scotland and Europe, and in the wider world, there are congregations of the Church of Scotland. And each of those congregations has a body which is made up of the elders, and if there is a minister, the minister, and they are the Kirk Session. And the Kirk Session is responsible for managing the life and the witness and the work of the congregation. But the elders also have a spiritual responsibility for the parish. Then, above that, we have presbytery. We say it with a degree of reverence, presbytery. Presbytery is made up, as you see there, of the minister, if there is a minister in a congregation, plus an elder. And they meet 9 times a year, I think it is, for this presbytery, together as a presbytery, and also in committee. And the committees do the work of presbytery on an ongoing basis. And there are others who come. So if you're a retired minister, you can have a place on presbytery, and that enables you to do locums and to keep preaching and doing all that kind of stuff, because most ministers don't ever want to retire, I'm told. And there are others who come to presbytery if you have a particular talent or skill, if you're an accountant or if you're used to building or so on, then you can be co-opted, as it were, onto the presbytery to provide special skill. And then each year, as we've just had, the Church of Scotland has the General Assembly, and they're the big boys. That's where all the decisions are made, allegedly. And that's elders and ministers from the presbytery who go. So our Ayr Presbytery is from Ballantrae in the south to Dundonald in the north and Cumnock in the east. And it takes in all of that. There are 48 congregations, 34 charges, and so you can see that lots of them are linked and multiple linkages and so on. And we send folks to the General Assembly from the presbytery, and we're on a rota, so you go every sort of 5 years-ish. If you're really keen, you can volunteer to go in between. And there are people who actually do that. There are about 750 people at the General Assembly, and they all are commissioners, and they're entitled to vote and to make decisions. And there are also reps from other denominations, and from other congregations around the world. I didn't hear it, but there were folk, they were talking about Africa, and there was a focus on Africa this week at the beginning on Monday afternoon, and I haven't watched it yet, but you get it online, and I would encourage you to do that, because apparently it was absolutely brilliant, and folk talking about how the church in Africa is growing and flourishing and really thriving, and how we should actually be doing some of the stuff that they're doing. And so I would encourage you to look at that. But that's the kind of work of the General Assembly. Again, the General Assembly has councils. So, for example, you have the Ministries Council, or Mission and Discipleship, Social Care, you have trusts, and they do the work for the General Assembly. So when the General Assembly says, we should really think about da-da-da, there's a council or a committee that does that and looks at it and reports back to the General Assembly. So this year there were 30 reports to the General Assembly. Some of them were very long and very complicated, and others were not at all. But they all get to report, and they have what are called proposed deliverances. Absolutely, thank you very much. And that's what they do to agree. They stamp their feet. It's madness. Anyway, so for example, they may have, we urge presbyteries, this is one from this year, we urge presbyteries and kirk sessions to engage with the Year of Young People initiative. We urge you. So there you are urged. And it's proposed because they haven't agreed it. And it means that when this report comes, there are all these deliverances, and you get to ask questions. And you get to read the report. You're meant to have read it in advance, and you should really have read it in advance. And you get to ask questions about the report, and then you get to ask about the deliverance. You can change words if you don't like it. Why are we using urge? Why don't we instruct? Why don't we? And you get all this debate and discussion and so on. I will come back to that, because it is important. But what about us? What about MPN? Well, over the last few years, we will see that our membership has gone down. From 2013 to 2017, 110 people have been removed from the role. Sadly, most of them died. But 36 have been added to the role, so new people are coming over that time, and that's good. But you can see there's not enough new people coming. We're losing more than are coming. And that is really common across the Church of Scotland and the Church in Scotland. And so we need to think about how we're going to do that. And that's partly what the Invitation Sunday is about. There's an opportunity for us to invite people along, and hopefully they will find something here that they like, and they will come and they will take part in what we do. But that reduction means that there are fewer people on Sundays, there are fewer people who are available to volunteer to help in the work of the church, and it would also affect our income. Well, let's see the next picture, because there's our income and expenditure. We try not to spend more than we get. Sometimes doesn't work, but generally it's not bad. What is more important is the next one. Because what it shows us, that yellow column now is our offerings that we receive from standing orders and from the open plate and so on, Sunday by Sunday, week by week. And you can see it's fairly steady. The income and the expenditure columns, that includes everything. So when we did the tower and we needed money and we asked for people to donate money because we had a problem with the tower, that goes on the total. But it's not an offering income. When we go to participatory budgeting and we've got money for the dishwasher, for Moncton, or for the cooker and all of that stuff, that's all taken into that, but it's not our offering income. And the offering income is nice and steady. In fact, the next slide, we don't actually have 85,000 members. Right? You need to look at the other side for that. So the 85 and the 90,000, that relates to the blue line, and the orange ones are our church roll or our membership. So you can see that as our membership has gone down, actually, our income has stayed pretty much the same. In fact, last year it went up. Now, you could argue that's because the folk that have left and died weren't given anything anyway. But we know that that's not true. Actually, we know that many of you are giving more and more and are incredibly generous in giving. And for that, we have to say a huge thank you. And on behalf of the Kirk Session and the Treasurer, we want to say thank you. It's really good to see that folk regularly look at their offerings and their standing orders and make an increase in that. And by way of thanks, I think there should be little plates of chocolates, which you can give out now and pass round and have a chocolate. Some of them have nuts, just to let you know. But feel free to help yourself to a wee chocolate as just a little thanks for that. And while you're enjoying that, I'm going to just keep going. All of that money enables us to do things in the community and in the church. And so here are some of the things that we do as a congregation. We gather for worship Sunday by Sunday, but we also gather for worship on other days. This was the Ladies' Day out at Moncton, so we have other occasions when we worship together. And month by month, we gather for worship at Messy Church. On Sundays, some of the things we do. We have Creators Club. That was new last year. And our young people have made some great videos that are online. You can go and watch them. They've been really encouraged by that, and they enjoy doing that. We have some preaching and teaching. There we go. We've just worked through John's Gospel. We have different types of service every so often. That was Jackie's baptism, which we'd never done before, but that was a good day. We also have done a prayer course, and hopefully that'll come up there in a wee second. And that was to encourage folk to get into prayer, to learn to pray, and to pray together, so that at the end of services we can offer prayer for anybody that wants prayer. We also try and engage with our community and do things in the community. So we do an Alpha course every year. We this year knitted angels, and we put them out just for folk to go and that was a great thing to do. And folk just got an angel, just a blessing of a gift at Christmas time. We always go and do something at the prom day, which is in August, and there's thousands of people down at the seashore in Prestwick. We have the opportunity to interact with them. Then this year also we did the alternative Advent calendar. So instead of going and opening it and getting a chocolate or a gift, when we opened it up, there was something in there for us to do so that we could bless people in the community and bless those folks around us. And then other events we had over the years. We've done a whole load of other events, but the Ossagilly Warriors were one of the things there, and they were just brilliant. And we do all sorts of other things again to try and engage. This week we had our quiz, and there are folk there who wouldn't normally be in church, but we get that opportunity to interact because there's something different. As well as that, we support different organisations. We support the food bank. It's still going, started here many years ago and still going, and we support that. We support street pastors. Some of it. That'll be Jan, who's a street pastor. So they're out working, and that's great. And also at the Ark in Ayr, we've got folk who are involved there with that. And also, you'll have heard us talking about the path of renewal. That's one of the things that has taken up quite a lot of my time over the last 18 months or so. And that's been a real encouragement for me, and it's challenged me and made me think differently, and hopefully it's challenged the folks who have done it. And as a result of that, we started our Growing with God groups this year to try and encourage more folk to get involved and to stir up passion and excitement and enthusiasm for Jesus. None of that takes into account any of the other things that we do, the Guild and the Boys Brigade and the Girls Brigade and the tea and the rotas and folk who do door duty and tea duty and do the count and do all that. There's hundreds of things that still go on. I didn't have enough time and I don't have enough photos. But there's loads of other stuff that goes on in the life of the church that are really important. And if you're volunteering for any of those, thank you for that. We literally couldn't do it without you. These things keep the congregation going and keep our work and witness going. But we are not independent. We're not a congregationalist church where we make our own decisions and do our own thing. We are part of something bigger, and decisions made elsewhere affect us positively as well as negatively. And so this year at the General Assembly, some of the councils decided that they would instruct things, and that's the most significant thing they can do. They can instruct, and when the General Assembly instructs, then you've got no option but jolly well do it. So here they were, they instructed. A couple of them were quite straightforward for us. Our Kirk session has been instructed to explore how the fresh vision for eldership given by the council applies to our context. Well, that's quite easy. We read the report, we see what they said, and we discuss what do we do with that. Pretty straightforward. The second one that they said was we were instructed to consider how the aspirations outlined in the report shape our engagement with children and young people, not in the church, but in the parish. So again, that's quite straightforward. We read the report, we see what they say, and we work out how does that affect us. But amazingly, the Church of Scotland General Assembly this year did something radical. Who knew it was even possible? The Council of Assembly, and I remember years ago being told that the Council of Assembly was the one you wanted to get onto if you ever wanted to be the moderator. Apparently it's the important one, or at least they think it is. And this year they brought a 10-year strategic plan to the church. And the General Assembly didn't like it. And they said, no, thanks. We're not having your plan. I think what really sealed its fate was that the last moderator got up and said it was the most disappointing report he'd ever seen being presented to an assembly. When the moderator, or even a former moderator, saying that, you're on pretty sticky ground. So it was bombed out, and they were told to go away and rethink and come back later in the week. And that gave other folk the opportunity to take these proposed deliverances, and because they're only proposed, they've not been agreed, you can change them. And you can bring new stuff, and you can bring counter proposals. And so what happened was we ended up with something really quite, for the church assembly, really quite radical. And they affect us. And so here are some of them. The first one was that they instructed the council and the Council of Assembly to work with other folks to enable a church structure that is lean and fit for purpose to lead reform. So the presbytery system, all of that stuff, they've got to look at and come back, not in 10 years, next year. That's a huge task, and it's going to be debated really for a long time. But the very fact that they're willing to look at it is significant. And then the second one was to instruct the council to bring forward proposals for 2019 that allow more funds for mission work. Well, let me tell you, if there's more funds available for mission work, we need to be ready to take those funds and use them for mission. But also, they're going to change, or they've been asked to look at a reformed ministry and mission allocation process. That's the money that we give to support ministry. This year we gave 58,000 to support ministry. And any look at that, if we can keep more, or every congregation can keep more of what they get, that would be good to do work locally. That's another huge task. Then they instructed presbyteries to challenge themselves in their presbytery plans to be robust, imaginative, and courageous in reducing the number of charges. So presbyteries have been instructed to reduce the number of charges. And that is difficult, because folk like me have been called to a congregation, and if I stay here and don't play, there's nothing presbytery can do about it. They can make it awkward, and they can put a lot of pressure and all that kind of stuff. But that makes it really difficult for everybody in the process. And so, there are options. They're providing, are talking about creating hub ministries, so you have a minister and worship leaders and so on, and they manage a number of congregations. That's a possibility. So there are other things that they're looking at. In the report, the figure they were talking about was 20%. If Ayr Presbytery has to lose 20% of its ministry, you're talking 6.5. That's quite a lot out of 34. You know, it's a lot. And how do you do that? It can't simply be those that are already or become vacant, because that doesn't make sense. It's particularly unfair. It can't simply exclude those congregations that happen to be wealthy and give more. They have to be included in the thinking. And that's difficult because, of course, you need their income in order to support the work of the ministry. So there's got to be a balance and thought about all of that. And it can't actually take account really of the fact of tenure. That is, I can stay here. We've got to find ways around all of that. I think it's unlikely that in years to come there will be more than 2 ministers in Prestwick. I think in my lifetime it'll probably get to that. I don't know what it'll look like. I don't know how they'll achieve that. But what I am convinced of is that we are part of Christ's church, and it's his kingdom that we're to build. That's why we read this today. We are part of a body. All of us have skills and talents and abilities. All of us have things to bring. And that includes our brothers and sisters in the south and in St. Nicholas and Kincaise. There are hands and feet and ears in these other places as well. And we are part of one body, and we need to remember that. The ongoing work of the kingdom is more important than the survival of any specific congregation. And we also need, I think, to remember that the loss of a minister or a ministry doesn't necessarily mean the loss of a congregation. There are other things that can be done. But what it does mean is that we need careful, thoughtful, collaborative planning for the future. And then there's one more that affects us. We have been instructed as a Kirk session to meet in conference to reflect on the state of decline of the national church, and in particular how that affects us locally and the other congregations round about us, to determine what our vision and mission is for the next 3 years. You see, that doesn't stop. Our vision, our mission is still to tell people about Jesus. There's still a harvest. There's still people out there that need to know the good news of the gospel. And it's us that are called to do that. So our elders need to get involved in that thinking. But you also need the opportunity to have your say in what you think about all of these things. So Leslie, give us a wave. For anybody that doesn't know yet, that's Leslie Keenan. She's our session clerk. Tell Leslie. I know I don't mean it that way. I sometimes mean it that way. Talk to anybody else. Talk to Leslie or talk to me. Because I understand that some of you here bear scars from a previous union that wasn't good. And there is pain in all of this. There is struggle in all of this. And it's right that we talk about it and that we think about it. I think it's also important that we get involved in it. There are options. One option is to say, no, we're having nothing to do with it. I think that's the wrong option. I think what we need to do is say, well, if change is coming, we need to be part of it. We need to get involved in it. We need to try and work out what works for us and for other people, rather than have something imposed on us. There is a huge harvest. We all have gifts given to us by God, and we need to use them to build His kingdom. We all have our part to play, and we are called to do our part for His kingdom. I do say quite often, I'm not about building an empire. I'm about building a kingdom, God's kingdom. And sometimes that means that we need to sacrifice. We need each other. We need to support and encourage each other, using the skills and the gifts that we've been given. We need to remember that that body of Christ is not just us. It's something that we are part of. It is our only responsibility to represent Jesus, to be His people, to show His love and His grace and His compassion in the world, to speak of Him and to build His kingdom. We do that in His name and in His strength, using His gifts that He gives to His people. And while all of the other stuff is going on and it's all got its place, if we focus on Jesus and making Him known, everything else will take care of itself. Amen.